So what do we know about the coal industry, the utility industry, and the world today? We live in a carbon-constrained world, and we live in an ever-increasing carbon-constrained world, and the pressures on coal continue to increase. And so we as an industry need to find solutions for carbon, for our industry, both for existing facilities, power plants that are out there today using coal, and we need to find new technology solutions for plant replacements or additions for new load for our utilities. And what I'm here to talk about today is a new technology that we in our initiative feel is really one of those solutions for new plants, plant replacement, load additions for utilities. That's called the Allam cycle. You heard Dr. Malott earlier this morning mention the Allam cycle in his keynote presentation as really a technology that is being developed as a transformational technology. It's not just taking one step forward in increasing efficiencies and reducing costs for our utilities. It's taking a leap forward by really transforming what that technology is going to do for us today. Now, your first question might be, why is there a guy with the title Manager of Renewable Energy Operations here today talking to us about coal? We use coal in our facilities at Minnesota Power. My facility burns biomass, but also combusts coal. And 3 of the other 4 power generation sites for Minnesota Power are coal-fired facilities. And within the operating companies of Elite, which is the parent company of Minnesota Power and our publicly traded company, we also own coal and we mine coal. So we take it from the very beginning all the way through to the utility side. The coal mine operation that we have is called BNI Energy, which operates BNI Coal, which is a lignite mine in North Dakota that supplies a mine mouth plant there. So we know coal. We've been in coal for many decades. The plant I manage today was originally built in 1929. So we've been in coal for many, many, many years, and we know a lot about coal. What do we know about coal historically? Coal has been king. #1 fuel for electric generation in the United States. #1 fuel for electric generation across the world, across the globe. The chart on the right-hand side of your slide here is just a comparison of coal consumption historically and a look forward for coal consumption on some of the larger countries around the world. And you can see by the top line there, the red line, that China dwarfs the United States in terms of coal consumption, more than 4 times the amount of coal consumed in China than the United States in those 2 countries alone. So this is not just a domestic challenge, this is an international challenge for us. But with coal being king, what else do we know about coal? Coal is king until it's not. In the year 2015, just 1 year ago, natural gas equaled coal for fuel used for electric generation in this country, in the United States. You've got 2 charts up here on the slide. Both come from the EIA's annual energy outlook. The left-hand chart shows historical and future electric generation fuels under a clean power plant scenario. The chart on the right shows the same fuels under a non-clean power plant scenario. What's consistent between these charts is coal decreases, natural gas and renewables increase for electric generation. And so by the year mid-2020s to late 2020s, under either scenario, they're showing that natural gas overtakes coal for fuel for electric generation. Huge challenge for us in the industry. Why is that? A lot of it's around carbon intensity of coal compared to the carbon intensity of natural gas. Of course, other pressures out there on the industry with cost, lots of supply of natural gas, but certainly we're here today to talk about coal, and we're here today to talk about solutions for coal. Energy industry challenges for us. Low-cost, reliable coal-fired generation is challenged in today's regulatory environment. We've heard that a lot today already. We're all very familiar with that. At the same time, there's a lot of natural gas showing up on our markets. But natural gas also has challenges long-term with carbon, with CO2 emissions. And renewable generation options have been increasing. You saw that on the chart that was just up here on the last slide. Lots of new renewables being built today in the United States, but intermittency is the challenge for renewables for our electric industry and specifically for companies like our company, Minnesota Power. So the electric utility side of Elite, Minnesota Power, is a smaller utility in northeastern Minnesota. We have about 1,800 megawatts of load. But what's unique for us is we serve some of the largest electric users in the country, in the taconite mines and the paper mills in northeastern Minnesota. These are companies that take hundreds of megawatts each from us for each plant. And they take energy around the clock. They take energy 24 hours a day, every day of the year. Intermittency is not a good thing for them in their operations. So we know very well the value of baseload generation and the need for baseload generation to support our industry. What do we provide in the electric industry today? We provide security, comfort, and quality of life for our customers. Intermittency does not help on any of those. What do we have for supply out there for fuels, coal and natural gas in the United States? Based on recent EIA data from 2014, at the production levels in 2014, we would have a 250-year supply of coal in this country, and we would have an 85-year supply of natural gas. Large supply, long-term supply of resources, challenged on the environmental side with carbon regulations. How do we marry those two together? We need a solution that includes new technologies that will allow us to use those fuels and allow us to use those fuels in a more efficient way and in an affordable economic way. So our vision and our call to action really is to develop a transformational technology to meet these challenges, to marry these two pathways together and bring us back to a future for the energy industry, not just for our industry, but for our partners that we're involved with in the state of North Dakota on this Allam Cycle initiative, for the country and globally, to really provide that next generation energy solution that we can all use to continue on in the coal industry. And our answer to that, as you've heard the name mentioned already today, is the Allam Cycle. So the Allam Cycle is a new technology, a new power cycle that's being developed by a company called 8 Rivers Technology. 8 Rivers Capital is a venture capital firm that owns the patents and the rights to the Allam Cycle, so they're our key partner in developing this technology. And the Allam Cycle is really a next generation technology. It provides the promise of increased efficiency with estimates for coal-fired Allam Cycle power plant at near 50% efficient. That's 1.4 times higher efficiency than the U.S. coal fleet average today. It provides the promise for affordable energy from coal and keeping costs reasonable for our customers. Economic power generation from the Allam Cycle with estimates on the cost of energy from Allam Cycle power plants between 4 and 5 cents per kilowatt hour with CO2 sales, or 6 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour without CO2 sales. So right in the range of current generation technologies. And the promise of the Allam Cycle, as you heard from Dr. Malott this morning, is really the way the power cycle is designed. It is a supercritical CO2 cycle. There is no water used in the cycle, so you do not take water and heat it to make steam. You combust your fuel in an oxygen environment at high temperature and high pressure, and what's coming out of your combustor is supercritical CO2 and water. You pull the water off, the supercritical CO2 is used to drive your turbine. And so the density of the energy in that power cycle is very high, and because of that high density of energy, you're allowed to have a smaller footprint for your plant. So another one of the benefits of an Allam Cycle plant is that it's only going to take about 20% of the space to build an Allam Cycle plant as it would to build a traditional coal plant. You don't have a lot of the equipment needed on the water side, and the energy density is very high, so your equipment is much smaller that you do have. Process diagram, so just a clip view of what the Allam Cycle looks like. In the yellow box on the right-hand side is what I would call the core power block for the Allam Cycle. So that's your combustor feeding the turbine. Coming off the turbine since you're using supercritical CO2 to power your turbine, coming off your turbine is CO2, still at high pressure. You take the heat out of that CO2 through heat exchangers, and then you still have CO2 at high pressure that requires very little compression to be usable straight into a pipeline. So some of that CO2 is recycled back into the system, into the combustor, to keep the energy, the heat in the system, and some of that CO2 can be pulled off to be put into a pipeline for utilization purposes. Now, on the coal design of this technology, which we're working on in our initiative, you're not burning natural gas in that combustor, you're burning syngas. So to make that syngas, you have to add the gray side, or the left side of this process diagram. You have to add a coal gasification unit and then syngas cleanup coming out of that coal gasification unit before you feed the combustor. So a lot of work has been done on this technology design to date. We've been working on this since 2013, so we've been working on this as a consortium for about 3 years on designing the coal side and addressing the challenges on the coal side. The Eight Rivers Capital Company, through one of their subsidiary companies, Net Power, has been developing the core power block side. And I've got a slide coming up that shows a pilot plant that's being constructed today in Texas that will prove the power block burning natural gas as the fuel for the Allam cycle technology. A little bit hard to see in the back maybe, but we're going to shift to economics here. This is estimates of levelized cost of electricity from the Allam cycle. I'm going to split this chart into two. Really above the red line on the chart there are natural gas-fired technologies. Below the red line are coal-fired technologies. And the Allam cycle in each of these instances is competitive, if not lower, in terms of cost than traditional technologies, and lower than traditional technologies without carbon capture. So on the gas side, on the top, you can see the bar that's circled there is an Allam cycle fired on natural gas, the Net Power design of the pilot plant that's being built today, and it's being compared to natural gas combined cycle with and without carbon capture. The length of the bar is really meant to show the difference in cost through variabilities of construction of a new plant, as well as whether you're achieving value through sale of CO2, which would be the bar on the left-hand side, or the lowering of cost, or whether you are adding cost to your plant because of a carbon tax that would be added to an existing plant that doesn't have carbon capture. So that would be the extensions of the bar on the right. So you can see both on the natural gas and on the coal-fired Allam cycle facilities, the expectation is that we're going to be in the cost range of existing technologies, and we're going to have fully compressed CO2 on the back end of this plant that's already captured and available for use for enhanced oil recovery or sequestration. What do we need to do that? We need a broad vision. I think one thing that we heard mentioning of this morning, but probably wasn't brought out as clearly as it needs to be, is we can capture all the CO2 that we want out of existing power plants, but it doesn't do us any good unless we have a sink for that CO2, unless we have a place to put that CO2. In our initiative, we're looking for a broad solution to that entire picture, which develops the capture technology in the Allam cycle, while at the same time developing the utilization of that CO2 in the state of North Dakota for enhanced oil recovery and sequestration. Now, North Dakota is fortunate enough to have both resources: huge lignite reserves in North Dakota, huge oil reserves in the Bakken footprint in western North Dakota. Really couples well for this type of project, for this type of demonstration. North Dakota is the place to do this, to demonstrate this technology. So a sustainable solution is really our broad vision for both the coal industry and for additional oil recovery. We would do that through demonstrating the Allam cycle technology, through the research work that we're doing today to address key challenges, the pilot plant that's being constructed in Texas, and then develop and build a commercial electric generation plant in North Dakota using local North Dakota lignite as the fuel. We would then transport the CO2 from this facility to be used in the Bakken area for enhanced oil recovery and eventually sequestration. And there's really, I've got 2 bullets here on that. The middle bullet, or the second bullet on the slide, talks about utilizing CO2 for enhanced oil recovery in conventional oil fields, already being done today, being done kind of across the country. In the southern portion of the U.S., just over the border in Saskatchewan, we're using CO2 today that's being generated as a means to enhance oil recovery from oil fields. The Bakken also has what's called tight oil fields, which is shale oil. Shale oil has not quite yet gotten to the point of being able to utilize CO2. There needs to be further development of technology and utilization there to be able to use CO2 in shale, because the properties react differently than in conventional oil fields. So we are fortunate to be partnered with the Energy and Environmental Research Center, so the research arm of the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks. They are really the premier expert on the Bakken, on Bakken shale, as well as having great expertise on carbon capture and through the Peace Corps partnership, sequestration opportunities for CO2 in the region. And moving on to that in our partnership, you've already heard me talk about the 2 elite companies in the upper right-hand portion of this slide. Minnesota Power is the utility, BNI Energy is the coal owner and coal miner. On the top left-hand side of this slide is our industrial partner on this initiative, Basin Electric Power Corporation, also located in North Dakota. And Basin Electric has an operating company, Dakota Gasification Company, which is probably the longest standing coal gasification plant in this country. They've been doing it since the 80s. They know about coal gasification. They know about gasification of lignite. They know all of the challenges. Very key partner for us in this development. State of North Dakota has been very interested in this. You can understand they have a big lignite resource, they have a big oil resource. How do we find a solution for that? So through their Lignite Energy Council, we've gotten some research and development assistance there on the work that we're doing to date. And the EERC that I already mentioned there in the bottom right-hand corner is the arm that is doing that research for us right now. And the Department of Energy and NETL is some flow-through funding that comes through the EERC and their programs to do this kind of work. 8 Rivers Capital, of course, is the owner of the Allam Cycle technology. So we have the right partners at the table, we're in the right location, and we really have a great path forward for success and development of this technology. Strong support for preserving the coal option. We're all here to preserve the coal option. That's what we're looking for out of this. I talked a lot about research and development and what we're doing so far. When you start to look at gasifying coal, whichever form of coal you're using, lignite, subbituminous, bituminous coal, you've got some constituents in that coal that you're going to have to deal with when you're talking about pressures of 300 bar and temperatures of 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. So you've got materials research that's going on at the EERC today. You've got corrosion research. You've got gas cleanup research that are all a portion of the work that we're doing today. Talked a little bit about the pilot plant that's being constructed right now in Texas. So that's proving the core power block being fueled by natural gas. 50 megawatt thermal, 25 megawatt electric plant is what the design is for that. And further development, both the technology side and the demonstration side through this power plant really creates our path forward for continued utilization of coal. The substantial investment already today is $15 million has gone into the research that we're doing right now on the coal side of the cycle, and the pilot plant in Texas has $140 million of investment for construction of that pilot plant. So there's a lot of money into this already. We've been working on it for a number of years. There's a number of steps to go in our pathway towards commercialization of the coal system, but we've certainly got a very good base to move forward on with this. Here's a cut slide on the pilot plant. Just a couple of things I'll call out on this. It's located in LaPorte, Texas, which is close to Houston. Expected to be in operation second quarter of 2017. I was actually there at this site. The bottom right picture is a construction picture from about 3 weeks ago. Myself and several others in the room actually were on that tour, took a tour of that site, and they're coming along pretty well. They've got a lot of the major equipment has already arrived on site. They were awaiting the turbine to arrive on site sometime here early fourth quarter, and they'll be putting everything together, commissioning, and doing their first fire second quarter of 2017. And what struck me as an engineer, the first thing I picked out walking around this site is, so you've got some heat exchangers. Heat exchangers have to handle high pressure, high temperature in this particular cycle. And I look at the nameplate on one of the heat exchangers on the site, and it says operating pressure 300 bar. That's pretty substantial equipment there, and that is definitely transformational technology. So what we've done so far, I've called all of these out so far in the presentation here today. We've identified and began to address the key technology challenges for advancement of the coal cycle. We've initiated the steps to design the pilot testing. The pilot plant's going in Texas, and how do we scale that up to a commercial plant, and how do we add the gasification to that to use coal as a fuel instead of natural gas. And then, of course, we've identified our partnership and funding pathways to support our full project development. This type of project, as we heard this morning, you don't get to a fourth and a fifth version of a technology without doing a first version and a second version. So taking the step to do the first version, in this case, of this technology is a big step. And we need partners that are engaged and involved in that, and we need support, as we have through the state of North Dakota, and we need support as we have through the Department of Energy to advance these technologies for our industry. And the last slide I have here today is really our path forward. So this talks about what's involved in our steps and our phases for continued development of the Allam cycle on coal. So the first two phases on the left-hand side of the arrow there are addressing the key technology challenges. So the work that the EERC has been doing for us on materials properties, corrosion, heat exchangers, what type of gasifier best fits this system, what is of concern with syngas combustion, how does that combustor need to be designed to handle syngas at those pressures and temperatures. That's all work that's being done today. You couple that with the pilot plant being fueled on natural gas, so that is testing the core power cycle. You're able to marry those two together with all of the challenges of integration to put this together into a coal-fired Allam cycle facility. And moving forward into a pre-feed and a feed for a commercial deployment. And our end goal is commercial demonstration of this technology by building a plant in the state of North Dakota somewhere in the 2020 to early 2020s timeframe. And I think we're well on track with that on the research side, on the demonstration side with the pilot plant. We're still working on the partnership side and who's involved and the amount of funding and where that funding is coming from. So certainly support from the industry, support from both our state and our federal governments are important to us in developing this technology as a solution and a pathway forward for all of us in the coal industry. That's what I had for you today. I thank you for your time and thank you for the opportunity to talk about really what we see as a future for our industry.